Hey there. Goal of this tutorial is to just to kind of show you some of the things that are available to you with the Tone.js thing that we were looking at, and this is really just scratching the surface. But I just wanted to plant some ideas in your head during the break, so you could think about what you would maybe want to do for your final piece. So here's just a quick example of something, and this is combining a tutorial I did with the canvas with this audio stuff, so I wanted you to see that they could actually be combined in a way as well. And what's going on here is that um, we have buttons to start and stop the music, and then we can control the volume of each of the different, there's three sounds. This volume 1, they're all kind of these like kind of Chinese-inspired plucked instruments. And the volume 1 is this one, volume 2 is this, and volume 3 is that. And what's happening is there's a step sequencer behind the scenes. I'll show you how that's built, and it's generating these tones that are within a kind of collection of like a scale. And so it's saying randomly picks notes from the scale for this guy, then this one, and then this one. They're all different, and so it's what we call a generative piece. It's always kind of changing and different, and you just don't know what's going to happen next. And so it combines randomness, but also there's some structure behind it as well. So as the notes get higher, these images will become brighter in their color, and as the notes go lower, they're darker. So you can see, let's just start it. So I don't know if you'll be able to hear it. I'm going to unplug my headphones. I'll send you this sketch so you can kind of take a look at it. Okay, so you can see how it's a generative piece that's combining visual and sonic images. I'm totally happy if you just want to do something that is sonic. That's totally cool as well. So what I want to show you is some of the steps that are involved in making something like that. We're not going to do that whole thing. It's maybe a little bit too complicated just off the gate, but I want you to see the kind of little steps that that evolved. So you can, the thing that I want you to do is be able to start to play around with some of these different variables so you can see how to control things. So you can try things like uh, controlling the rhythm, controlling the note set, the frequencies, the types of scale, the types of like modes and things like that. So that's and then the quality of the tone. So that's my goal in showing you this stuff, is to give you a kind of starting point to start experimenting. So let's start with this thing called a step sequencer. What I have here, this is like a basic. So we have, here's our going to preview this. Always use Google Chrome when we're working with. So I've eliminated all the visual elements for right now. We have the stop and start, and I've changed the tone so you can hear some of the variety of tones that we have. And so what I want you to see is I'm going to hit. I'm going to dial this guy back. So this one hits. Okay, so I'm going to stop that. So you can see they're kind of alternating. So let's go over to the step sequencer here. And also check this out. That here's the on click. That's a what they call a event handler. That's lets you kind of trigger events from HTML that happen in JavaScript. Okay, so how the rhythms are set up is a step sequencer. It's a very common thing in all kind of a lot of musical applications. And here's a simple one, and I'll show you how to make it more complicated. So what I have here is just 4 steps within the sequence. Think of this like a measure. And so what we have here, this is called an array. If you're new to programming, arrays are very common. Think of it like a collection of elements. This could be like all 50 states in the United States, or it could be a collection of notes, a collection of, like here we have like a scale kind of thing. Here's like a smaller scale. So you use them all the time, and what it is each one of these has an index number. This is the first slot. It counts from 0, so it's 0, 1, 2, 3. So it's like an index. At the second slot, the number is 1. At the third slot, the number is 0. It's always counting from 0. At the first slot here, the 0 slot, it's 1. Okay, so this is what was creating that alternating. First this step, and then that step, and then this step, and then that step. And on this third, each one of these was an instrument. On this last one, I have only hit once, right at the beginning. It's like the Bootsy Collins of step sequencers there. We'll talk about the notes in a second, but what I want you to see is that this information feeds down into here. And this is called a function. And what a function does is it's like the verbs of the programming world, if that makes any sense. And I'm just going to walk. You don't have to know everything about this. I just want you to see how it functions and where you can manipulate things in order to make it do what you want it to do. So what it's saying here is in this step function, if the steps, like we saw up there, if the step index equals, this is the equivalency of 1. So when there's a 1 here in this slot, do this. That's what this is saying. Okay? So if for steps, you can see how this guy is called steps here. So there's going to be a different thing to do for each one of these steps, steps 2, steps 3. So for steps, the first note, the first sound, when it equals 1, do this. We're going to choose a random note and then make that turn into an index for our notes. And then this is just a print thing I'm going to talk about in a little bit. And then this will play the note. Okay, so what we're doing here is we're tying that oscillator, like we talked about last time, to the attack and decay here, and this is the frequency. So this is just saying when this hits, play the note. When it's a 1, play. When it's a 0, don't play. 1, play. 0, don't play. That's how this works. So what you can then do is create what I want you to do. One of those areas that you can kind of mess around with is then to create more complicated rhythms of your own, just by changing this sequence of zeros and ones once again. So you might want to think about this so what I have here are, instead of just one group of 4, I'll have 16. So it's now you can make all sorts of kind of more complicated patterns between these 3 sounds, and that's what I've done with this. Let's just kind of listen to that for a second. Everything else is the same. I'm just changing the step sequence instead of it being that kind of, oh, I want to change one more thing. Way down at the bottom, it's the speed. I want to change it from 4n to 8n. With that, it just doubles it's like changing the beats per minute to twice the amount. And let's listen to this. And you can kind of lower. So we can just listen to these first 2 guys here. Okay, so you can see how that has changed. Let me just make sure I save that and then do this. I feel like it should have been a little faster. There we go. So you can see how this is the new thing here. Sorry about that, guys. So what I did there is I went Command R to refresh. You got to save this, go to the Google, go to your web browser, and then hit Command R. Okay, so that's always the way to kind of reactivate this thing. Go Command R, and then it resets it. Okay, so let's take a look at some other kind of features of what's going on. So this is the step sequence, this is the rhythm section. Okay, now let's take a look at the notes. And here I have just two groups of notes. I got a little lazy. I could have had three, a whole nother one here, and you could have notes 3. And you could make these, I know Sam, you were interested in working with chords and things. You could have these relate to those and make these be like the chord top tones. Like you could go C4 here. And then, you know, you could work with your ninths and different kind of ideas for those tones. Okay. So what I have here, you can see these are the bass tones here. The top two notes are going to be sharing the same scale. And actually, you know what? Let's do that. Let's have one of those synths be a little bit higher, and I'm going to make that notes 3. These don't have to be in any order here, and I'm going to just these are all sharps right now, like C sharp, D sharp. I just wanted to give you an example of how to do a sharp, and so you just didn't up above, it's all C, D, E, etc. Please feel free to use whichever one you're more comfortable with, or whatever scale is going to be the right thing for you. What I'm doing here is I'm just making these guys so we can hear the differences between these notes. So one's going to be a little bit higher, and like an octave higher. Okay. Actually want to make that one 5. Okay, so now let's see how those work here. I just got to let's say for the second one, I wanted to refer back to notes 3 now. Okay, and that should, here we go, notes 3. This is a good example. So let's just walk through this. What's happening here is it's saying when steps 2 is equal to 1. Okay, so when it's punching out these numbers quite a bit now, and then there's some little rhythms there. Okay, so every time that you hit a 1, choose a random note within this array. Okay, and what this is all about, this is generating a random note from 0 to 1. It's multiplying it times the length of the array, which is, you know, 7 notes. So, and then it's making that that multiplication with this F2. It's saying take notes 3 and using this. This is turning it from a floating point to an integer, and so it's just generating out. Let me show you. It's just generating out an index number for that array. That's all you need to know. It's generating an index for the array. And here's a really cool thing. When you want to know, like, what's the number that's coming out of here, all you need to do is go console.log and then say the number from step to array is, and then I'm going to make a little space there and say plus, and then say, see that F2 there? It's going to print that out for me. Now let's run this, and we'll see if everything's working the way we want. Okay, good. I think everything should be good. I'm going to hit refresh. I'm going to hit start. You can hear how that... So now you can hear how these notes are higher now because we just did that little change we brought those up an octave. Okay, now let's take a look behind the scenes. I'm in Google Chrome. I'm going to go view, and I'm going to go to the developer area here and say developer tools, and look at this. This is the console that we've been printing this information to. Okay, and that's this thing that I sent. Every time the step runs through, it's choosing a random number. Let's take a look at each one of those. So this is what's happening here. This console log, the number from step 2 array, is it's chosen the G sharp 4, the F sharp 4, the D sharp 4. So that's what this stuff here is doing. Is it's saying generate a random number within this here. So it's sometimes it went G sharp 4, and then it went A sharp or something like that. It's choosing numbers between 0 and 7, And that's the randomness, that's that generative kind of cool thing that, so we're combining this synchronized thing that we know with this unexpected notes to hitting at these different times that we don't expect. And that's what is happening here. So you can experiment with what note selections you want. That's really a cool thing, and then how those combine in good ways. Okay, so I think those are the key things that I wanted to show you. Okay, other ways to read this just as a refresher. We're what I'm doing here is, this is where I'm assigning these oscillators. This is just a word that you can make anything, but you want it to be like one word or camel case something. Oscillator 2, oscillator 3. And this is just the nomenclature you need. You see I'm using three different synth tones. There's synth instruments. Let me show you here in this. If you just Google tone.js, you'll get this thing on GitHub like we did for all the installation stuff. And if this is confusing, don't worry. I'm going to help you with all of it if you want to go there. And once again, I'm not expecting you to understand absolutely everything. What I want you to do is see the variables that you can experiment with and start to have fun playing with the sounds, playing with the creative possibilities. So here are the instruments that I'm choosing, and then that plucked synth is, I'm going to give you an example that the first thing that I showed you is using that. So here are the three other ones that let's hold off on the sampler until next week. And you can also see on those other ones I was putting some delay effects and things like that on here, and phasers and all sorts of cool things that you can do. And it's all, like I said, happening live in the browser, which is really neat. Okay, so what you're doing, how you do that here is you just change the type of synth, the instrument that you want. So it's oscillator 2 now, so I could change this to FM synth here, and now we can listen to that. Let's go back. I think this is the guy here. Maybe it's this one. And I'm gonna go there, so you can hear the different tone now. Okay, cool. Okay, and that I believe, and then this stuff here is what's bringing in the dial information. So take a look at how, if we go back to the source code, we're in the JavaScript view there before. Source code, you can see this oscillator 1. You can change your knobs to anything you want to here. We're using the input element from HTML. We're choosing the type range. On change, it's one of those event handlers. V1, the minimum is, this is in decibels, so 0 is, the maximum is 0, the minus 100 is like you can't hear it. And so check this out. So when we go, what that's doing, when this on change, this V1, this is called a function. It's triggering this thing in here. So that here's the V1, and this is saying take that that range between minus 100 and 100 and set that to the volume right here. Okay, so that's all that's going on again there. And then this starts and stops the transport, and that's the beats per minute. Okay, so I'm going to stop there. I just wanted to show you some of the way that you can work with the audio within JavaScript.